Welcome to Behind the Wines, a freshly bottled podcast about Australian wine, the wines we love, and the people behind them. My mission is simple. I want to get down into the cellar with sommeliers, stomp some grapes with winemakers, and have chats with our finest critics, growers, retailers, and chefs. Welcome to Behind the Wines, recorded once again at the iconic Melbourne Cricket Ground, where history, sport, culture, and for today, wine and food collide. In this episode, we explore Peccavi Wines, a boutique winery making waves from one of Australia's most celebrated wine regions, and certainly one of my favourite, Margaret River. The owner, Jeremy Muller, shares his journey of transforming an exceptional vineyard site into a world-class winery, driven by his unwavering ambition, vision, and with a whole lot of passion. So join me as we go behind the wines. Welcome to Behind the Wines, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Now let's start with the name. I believe Peccavi means I have sinned in Latin. Now, Jeremy, is there anything you'd like to get off your chest, or is there anything you want to confess with me and my audience today? And remember, this is a safe space.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, I was 27 years in the foreign exchange markets in Asia. I just figured it was a fairly appropriate name. Something I remember from school, and I was like, oh yeah, that sort of ties in well.
Or I thought maybe you just wanted to create some bloody good wines that invoked lust, gluttony, greed, pride, just to name a few.
Yeah, it's a good one. No, it's all part of it.
To be honest, I think gluttony and sloth is probably what my good description of my wine consumption.
Yes.
Peccavi is based in Margaret River, one of Australia's most renowned wine regions. What brought you there, and what made you decide this was the perfect place to establish a winery?
A few reasons, actually. I mean, first of all, at the time I was living in Singapore, so there was the proximity to Singapore. But then as well, Margaret River, I was living in Japan in the sort of early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And over there, you had a lot of the Australian winemakers would come over, and they would show their wine. So all the Bordeaux, Champagne houses, White Burgundy producers tended to go to sort of Singapore and Hong Kong, whereas the Australians were going over to Japan. As a result, I was able to taste a whole load of early Margaret River wines, and to me they were incredible. So I was brought up in a house where basically at home every white wine we had would have been a White Burgundy. Every red wine would have been a Bordeaux. And so Margaret River is similar to Napa Valley, probably one of the only places in the world where you can make a world-class Chardonnay and a world-class Cabernet Merlot in the same vineyard.
So tell us about the vineyard itself. What makes the site so special, and how does it influence the character of your wines?
There's a ridge that runs sort of from north from where we are, the northern part in Yallingham, right the way down towards Margaret River Township itself. And that ridge pretty much has uniform gravel, loamy soils. And all I'd say the best vineyards pretty much in Margaret River are on that ridge. We're there, so our site has let's say the perfect gravel, loamy soils, and it's pretty consistent throughout. It was originally it was the gravel yard for the Shire at one point, but also we're the highest point in the Margaret River region. So as a result, we get this amazing wind effect coming through, which is another thing that actually makes Margaret River itself special, but especially on my side. And that's where you get these breezes coming through. You've got Geograph Bay in the northern part, Indian Ocean to the west, and it basically brings cool air from the Indian Ocean up across the ridge during the day and warm air at night, and that gives a moderating effect of Margaret River. So we've got the two sort of natural things I'd say for the vineyard, but then as well as that, the other big difference is something that I've done is over time did soil mapping when I first bought the place, and then changed a lot of the clones. So we got one of the sort of probably the biggest clonal selections in the region. We were the first people in Australia to get the Bordeaux clones of Merlot, and also a couple of the Cabernet clones as well.
So when you set out to make a wine, what did you choose to focus on and why? And was there any particular style or philosophy that guided you?
For me, it's very much you want it to be doing what the region does, what the soil where you are does best. So for me, Margaret River is the closest microclimate in the world to Bordeaux. As a result, that's why you see predominantly the Bordeaux classic, although then you've got Chardonnay now for whites. But so I really went initially using the Bordeaux style, making older world style red, and then with the whites I sort of just literally wanted to go as classic Margaret River gingin as possible. The other thing that I set out to do, I wanted to sort of make my mark, I guess, do something a little bit different, and that was where I sort of was seeing in Australia, really definitely Margaret River, no one's really doing a top end Merlot. So what I set out to do and what I wanted to do was make a world-class Muller, which is something that now, we've had incredible success write-ups from sort of so many critics. We were the highest scoring wine from Halliday a couple of 2-3 years ago. We've had like numerous accolades about it. That's pretty exciting when you actually do that yourself and go out and do something different that people haven't really done before.
Yeah, great. So what about the vineyard itself? How large is it? What type of production levels?
Yeah, it's 110 acres, but about 41 acres under vine. So at the moment we still sell some grapes, but in total we're making at the moment about 5,000 dozen a year. That's what we're doing right now. And that's sort of split between probably 2,500 would be no regrets, maybe 2,000 Peccavi, and then probably about 500 or so of the estate wines. So the 3 different ranges of wines that we do.
Seems like you're really about quality over quantity.
Correct.
I see that, even with your subscription, your member base, you limit, the amount of wines.
So some of them we have to. With the estate wines, it's like, demand certain times now is pretty big, and people just want to get hold of the wines, and so we have to limit it, that's all. It's just, it's a good problem to have though.
So Jeremy Oliver, when he was on this podcast just last month, said that Margaret River, in the 80s and 90s, we're making these beautiful structural wines, could be put up next to those wines from Bordeaux. And I guess you said that before, that was kind of your influence, having a look. But he said since then, he says the Cab Sauvs are getting skinny, they're green, they're coming they're sort of the same as the Yarra Valley, from a region as a whole. And I know you're probably trying to produce something that's on the top end. Would you agree with that statement?
Because obviously, your local producers, you don't want to sort of put down the air. I don't know. I think there's there's a lot more of the commercial wines out there, but I think the top end wines are still making great wines. There is a larger, as I would say, sort of supermarket wine. There is more and more of that. But in some ways as well, that's useful for promoting the region because it's still pretty good wines. But overall, the top stuff is still, I would say still very good. There's some great producers down there.
And how have you evolved the wine styles, Peccavi? And have there been any unexpected discoveries along the way?
No, because for me, it's like, keep the old thing about keeping it simple and don't change anything that's not broken. I really think Margaret River makes certain wines incredibly well. I'm not trying to be creative. We do use a hands-off winemaking approach. Everything's very easy. It's, the wine, people say it all the time, wine is made in the vineyard, and that's so true. But as a result, I don't think we're not trying to change much. The clones is the big thing that I did change, by bringing the best sort of quality of clones you can from other regions that are similar around the world, since Bordeaux. But other than that, I'm not trying to change anything really.
And you mentioned before the yield levels of your different wines, but what is essentially the difference between the state and the no regrets?
Well, the no regrets, there's 2 things with the no regrets. One, we try to keep the similar style each year. So, no matter what happens in vintage. So in like a cooler year, we might get more from the north, and in a warmer year, we get some grapes from the south. So we do buy some other grapes in to blend into that. The other thing with no regrets is and this is why it's done very well a lot of the time, where it's sort of, some of the best value wines from Halliday or different things like this. It was in Qantas on business class stuff. And the reason being, we actually sort of downgrade fruit that would go into either the estate or Peccavi, and we put into no regrets sometimes, just if it doesn't fit in with the other wines. So you're often getting wine that's sort of destined for a $75 or $150 bottle of wine going to something that retails for 26. And that's obviously, why the quality level of that one's so good. But then the Peccavi wines, which is our main production, they're all made, it's all hand-picked, it's all estate grown, 100% estate grown using top-end French oak. But the estate wines, these are ones I make with Stuart Watson. He's the winemaker at Woodlands. Him and his family, they were sort of for years trying to tell me I needed to make wine myself. So we actually started making wine at Peccavi 10 years ago. This is my 10th vintage. And Stuart and I, we'd gone out and found the best equipment. We got a hand sorting table. Up to a couple of years ago, I think there was only 5 of those in all of Margaret River, which is pretty crazy when you think of it like that, because most other places in the world, you can't make a world-class wine without one. But we basically invested in equipment, in people, and we just made this small batch Merlot and Cabernet at the estate, and that's sort of our top-end wine.
Right, so between the three, you seem like you've got a lot of markets covered, but it still sounds a lot of premium quality in those wines.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Your wines have been recognised around the world. How have you been received in key markets, and what feedback has meant the most to you?
We are very lucky. We were sort of in Korea, we were big in Korea. We had very lucky that the Australian ambassador was using our wines pretty much exclusively. Very exciting. We make wine for Harrods in the UK. Again, I think we're one of only a few winemakers that make wine for them. But that's, I think, some of the best accolades I've had. We were once finalists for Wine of the Year with Jeremy Oliver. That was pretty cool. And I think the Robert Parker's Wine Advocate did a big write-up. This is probably about 5 years ago, talking about how Margaret River, or they was talking about how Western Australia. The article was Western Australia killing it basically, and it says about how well it's doing for the size of it compared with the rest of the wines in Australia. And it then spoke about the 8 stellar producers. We were named as one of those. We're one of 6 in Margaret River. The other 2 were elsewhere. And of the 6, there was like 4 of the original 5. And then there was ourselves and company Cloudburst. And that was like really good because the article ended like the most exciting thing happening in Margaret River right now is what newcomer Jeremy Muller's doing. And to hear them talking about the clones and what a difference and how it's going to change things in the country, that was pretty cool.
What type of volume or percentage are we looking at going into foreign markets?
Probably about half actually. Yeah, it's quite big. Yeah, originally at one point it was even more because we sell a lot of wine to Singapore, Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, the UK. We're just about to start going to the US. So yeah, our overseas market's been good because before COVID we were into restaurants really. It was more all restaurants and hotels. That was where we sort of made our name in a lot of world-class Michelin-star restaurants around the world. Like Heston's Dinner in London, things like this. And it's always lovely when you see your wines in a place like that. It's pretty cool.
So your winemaking team initially included the likes of Brian Fletcher, and I believe Colin Bell's still there. How have their expertise influenced your wine you produce?
Very much so. I say Brian's influence is still there. We make the rest of our wines at Naturist Vintners with Bruce Jukes and Remy Guise. I think the initial styles, as I say, Brian was very much involved with. But as I said earlier, everything about what we're doing is really in the vineyard. And Colin Bell here, he was like Viticulturist of the Year, which is only one person in Australia gets that title, and then they represent pretty much everybody. He's been our viticulturist since pretty much day one. They've looked after the vines now, the same company for 30 years.
All right. The MCC Food and Wine Society values aged wines. How do Peccavi wines evolve with time, and do you have a standout vintage that has surprised you?
Interesting question, but one I can't really answer that well in the sense that my first vintage was 2007, and they're still looking youthful and strong. So, we're just hoping that all the wines age, and they're aging incredibly well. So we've been very lucky on that sense. Yeah, and then vintage-wise, the 18 was still, I would say, the best vintage, but that was pretty much for everybody in Margaret River, both reds and whites as well, so that's pretty unique. We're very blessed over there. It's one of the wineries, other than the year that I bought the place, which so 2006 was my first vintage, was like the worst vintage on record. We've pretty much had, some trying vintages, but good vintages since.
And so how do you find the process of providing wines for the Long Room Food and Wine Society today, and what should I be looking out for today?
I'll tell you what, the committee and the way this worked, I thought was amazing. I have never experienced anything with the level of organisation, detail that's gone into it. It was amazing. So I actually had to fly in 3 weeks ago with the wines, and we then spoke about every single wine with the chefs, with the committee, going through the whole thing, working out what will go best, what will taste, what will... Amazing. I was actually really impressed. I've done talks pretty much all over the world, never had anyone with this level of detail. So it was actually very impressive, very good, and really, that's what I'm looking forward to today. So yeah, pretty cool. And then I think wines-wise, well, hopefully you're going to enjoy them all. I mean, there's some crackers. We got one of the wines which won 2 trophies. 1 trophy for best red wine in Australia and best Cabernet basically in the world in the competition, in one of the world's big, the IWSC competition in Hong Kong. We got another one which is, they say, the Estate Merlot, which I think will go down very well. But I hope you enjoy all of them.
I'm sure we do. It's always a really good day here. And so, we're standing here in this noisy room, and once again, I do apologise to the audience. And we're looking at an empty MCG now. I can see the mowers that's all preparing for AFL after the cricket season has been. Imagine the atmosphere of a packed MCG on a day like this, and if you had to pair that with one wine of yours, what would it be and why?
Chardonnay with the sun shining like this and everything else, sitting outside. I think a perfect Margaret River Chardonnay is about as good as you're going to get for that.
Well, that's great. So Jeremy, now that concludes the formalities of today, but before we go, I have a little segment that I like to call Glass Half Full.
Okay.
It's the rules are simple, one question, one answer, and are you ready?
Go on.
Okay. AFL or cricket?
Cricket.
Dockers or Eagles?
Oh, Eagles.
Cabernet Sauvignon or Chardonnay?
It's like asking me my favourite, my two boys. Oh, I don't know. No.
Can't split them?
Chardonnay. Yeah, if you can't split them.
A perfectly aged bottle or a fresh new vintage?
A perfectly aged bottle.
Favourite Australian wine region other than Margaret River?
Macedon Ranges.
Charles Napier or John Monash?
Charles Napier.
Winemaking or wine tasting?
Well, wine tasting. Eh?
First wine you brought to cellar?
Chateau de Tertre, which I'm not sure if my pronunciation's correct though.
And do you remember the year?
Oh no, it would have been illegal. It was bought when I went on a school trip to France. I would have been 13, so a long time ago.
Oldest wine you've tasted that was still showing length?
I've been lucky to have a few from my birth year. 1968 Grange came out really well.
Favourite restaurant in your region of Margaret River?
La Scarpetta, an Italian in Margaret River. Amazing place.
The best wine you've had this year?
Oh, possibly a 1999 Mosswood drank last night. There you go.
Would you prefer a glowing review from Jeremy Oliver or a heartfelt praise from a satisfied customer?
Heartfelt praise. It's nothing better than especially when you go to a restaurant where you don't know anybody and you see people drinking your wine, smiling and talking about it. And that is one of the best feelings.
And lastly, koala or quokka?
Oh, quokka.
And that's a wrap, Jeremy.
Brilliant.
A huge thank you for sharing your story, insights and passions for Peccavi Wines. From the inspiration behind the winery to the evolution of its wine styles and global recognition, it's clear that behind every bottle is not just a dedication and craftsmanship, but also a great sense of adventure and a deep respect for Margaret River. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Behind the Wines. A huge thank you for joining us. Your support means everything. Like a good wine, the best stories are meant to be shared. So make sure you subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, leave a comment, and let us know your thoughts on our socials. And go to our website for some more stories, special offers, upcoming events, and exclusive content. And special thanks to PS Wine Selections for your ongoing support. Until next time, cheers.